Hello everyone and welcome back to Onshape. Today we're going to look at a new type of modeling that we haven't done before, and that is an assembly. Now we have been creating individual parts, and that's what we want to do whenever we're working with any sort of CAD software, is start by building a part and then we put them together later. That's what we do in the real world. We have lots of different mechanisms and machines that are made up of lots of different parts. But what we haven't seen yet in Onshape is how to put those parts together. So I am now in an assembly. I've created an assembly the same way that I have any other sort of document. But usually what I see is a part, which is where we create our part. But we also have an assembly studio. And I'm going to come over here and click the assembly. And if I want to do an assembly, I need to have things to assemble. So I'm going to go up to the insert button and I want to insert some parts. Now I have nothing for my current document. If you had just created a part, you would see that listed here, but sometimes we have parts we've had to upload. So I'm going to go to other documents. I want to go to Onshape and I want to open the folder called Selfie Stick. Now I've already put in all of my files here and I want to see that I have each of the parts for the selfie stick. So I'm going to click on the first part here, just that plastic head. This is a pin. I'm going to click on it and it's going to automatically insert it over here. So I have that in the window. So I can just scroll out and I'll be able to see that there's one part here. I'm going to go back and I want some more parts. I'm going to put the stick top in here. I'm going to click on the stick top and it'll let me place it. And I'm going to do this with each of the parts that I see listed in this folder. I want to make sure I have everything out here. I use every part once. Now, if I wanted to use a part twice, I could click that stick top again, and it would let me place it again in my window. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump back here for a second. We're going to go ahead and say all these parts have been inserted. So I want to be able to put these together so that I can have a fully functioning selfie stick. I already have one here. Using different assembly constraints, I can treat this like an actual physical model, and I can see how some of these parts would interact with each other. So that's what we're going to be doing today in an assembly as we start creating the selfie stick. So I'm going to come back over here and I have all of my parts nice and lined up. This is a good way to start. I can see everything. I know where they should go. And I want to start creating these and putting them together in a way that they'll react the way a real mechanism would be expected to react. So I have my mechanism here, and there is a drawing that we can look at to reference, but we're going to go ahead and look at this guy just to see how it reacts. Now I can pull this out, but there's nothing really I want to worry about with that right now. And what we're going to talk about first are the 6 degrees of freedom. Now we know we can move up and down, left and right, and then in and out. Now on a two-dimensional surface like your computer screen, sometimes it's hard to understand how three-dimensional objects move. But we do know that there is a three-dimensional plane here where we can go up, down, left, right, in and out. And I can pan around this object and look at it at all of these different angles. So I can pull the slide in and out. I can move this around and get it to kind of flex the way I would expect it to. And it's going to be attached to each one of these parts the way we would want to see a real selfie stick. So we're going to go ahead and go to our window here so that we can see how each of these are attached. Now I'm going to start with the very base, the bottom part. I see it listed over here. I have 2, 3, 4, all the way through 10 different pieces here. And I'm going to start by right-clicking, and I'm going to click Fix. Now the reason I'm going to do this is, as you can see, if I grab these other parts, I can move them around. And as we start to attach them, they're not really going to want to fit the way I want them to if they can always move around. Remember, you hold something in your hand to prevent it from moving. And if we were assembling this selfie stick, we would hold it down. Gravity would affect it. But in Onshape, those parts aren't in there yet. There's nothing to hold it. There's no gravity. So things just kind of float there and they'll move as if there were no gravity. So I'm going to use that fix command and I can unfix it. But that fix allows it to stay in this position, so I can't drag this around. In fact, you're going to see this little icon here that helps me understand this is in a fixed position. So this fixed position means this will no longer move as I move the rest of the parts. I'm going to grab the top of the selfie stick, and I'm going to use a fasten constraint. So when I use a fasten constraint, come here to my constraints. You'll see that I have several different constraints that I can use to build my assembly. Now that fasten constraint is going to allow me to fasten this into this side. So I'm going to click here and then click and check. And now what I should be able to do is move this in and out. The constraint that I want to use on this, the constraint that I'm going to want to use on this top piece will be the start. The constraint that I'm going to want to use on this piece is a planar constraint. So I'm going to click the planar constraint, and this will allow me to take two planes and constrain them to each other. So I'll click on the outside of the shaft, and then this inside piece here, and then the check mark. So now I can slide it around. That did not constrain at all. Start 2. The constraint that I want to use on this top piece is going to be the slider constraint. And I'm going to choose a slider constraint because I want this to actually move in and out of the bottom. So I'm going to select this piece and then that interior circle. It's going to center it on that axis. I'll click the green check. And what I should see is this is now able to move in and out. Now I can drag side to side or up and down. And that's really not going to do anything. It's that in and out motion that I can get now. I'm going to go ahead and close that constraint. Again, I can see this is moving the way I want it to. That's good. And I'm going to come to my next constraint. Well, I'm going to get these pieces here to connect to each other. So what I need them to do is to fasten on the top. So I'm going to grab the fasten constraint because these pieces won't move on their own. I'm going to change my view so I can see the bottom. And now I'm going to click fasten. Now what I should see is that they are connected, and if I try to drag them apart, they're going to move together. And that's what I want to see with these, is it's a solid movement. And that fasten constraint is like adding super glue. So it's not going to come apart anymore. It's going to stay stuck together as if we glued those parts. Now with the slider constraint, I still have a degree of freedom. If I use the slider and I grab this, it's going to move in and out. So I have 2 degrees of freedom. I can move forward and backwards. The other 4, though, I've lost. With the top piece here, what would hold a phone, I have no more degrees of freedom between these two parts, the top and the bottom. I've completely limited that using the slider constraint. Well, the next thing I need to do is I want to take this piece here and I need to attach it right there. Now we know that this piece should be able to move around. Stop. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this piece here and we're going to attach it right on the edge. Now I'm going to change my view. Whenever I'm going to add a new part, I want to make sure my view is changed so that I can see everything lined up where I want it. This is going to make my constraints a lot easier to complete once I've placed the objects in relatively the right position. Now I'm going to move this a little bit forward so I can see all of those different sides and positions. I'm going to grab my next constraint and I'm going to attach those together. Now I have a revolution. I have the slider mate. Well, I don't want a slider. I don't want it to come off. I have planar, cylindrical, pin slot, and ball. Now we're going to really use the ball or the parallel because we have no balls or parallels. Well, let's use the cylindrical constraint and see what happens. I do have a cylinder. So I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to choose this hole and this outer edge and check that off. What I should see is that this connects, and it doesn't quite, but what it did do for me is made sure they stayed together. So we know we're close. So I need to do something that allows these to stay connected. I'm going to grab the planar constraint now. I'm going to click on the surface, on the outside surface here, and then I'm going to turn this around and I want to click on the surface here. And what that's done now is it moves it all in together. So I decided I need a cylinder. So the cylinder let me connect these two pieces together, and the planar constraint allowed me to take the back face and the front face and glue those together so it can rotate the way we'd expect it to, but these will stay together now.